Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Two Scary Stories. My name is JT. Sorry, I can't do the deep voice. I'm just gonna talk normally in this one. Sorry, guys. Last time it really actually hurt my throat. That wasn't like a voice change. That actually hurt my throat. Have my waffle candle again. So here we go. Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to be reading 3 scary stories. This first one is called We Played with a Ouija Board and Contacted a Dead Relative and Something Else. So this is my first post here, so I apologize for any typos if it sucks, but this is the scariest thing that's happened to me so far. I was about 17, 18, a senior in high school, and I always hung out with my sister, she's 5 years older than me, and her friends. Tonight it was us siblings, her best friend H, who is the same age as my sister, and our friend G, who was about 20, and enlisted in the army. We thought it would be a great idea, since it was close to Halloween, to play a little Ouija board for the first time together. We got a Ouija board and decided to turn all the lights off in the house and light a few candles to really set the mood. So we sat on the floor of the living room and started our little game. I was sitting between H and G and across from my sister. It took a while, but we finally got a response when G asked if anyone was there. We kinda giggled because we thought one of us was responsible, but then it started spelling out "Ma Ma." My sister and I immediately go pale and make eye contact across the board. A grandmother passed away next door about a year prior to this. Before we could ask another question, the planchette spelled out the word love. We still weren't convinced. A little spooked, but not scared, G then asked the board, "How many children do you have?" And the planchette slid to the number 2, which is the correct number of kids our grandmother had. It's important to know that G and H didn't know much about our grandmother. They came into our lives after our grandmother had passed away, so they never met her. The planchette spelled out the words, "Roll Tide." Now we live in Alabama, and my grandmother was the biggest Alabama football fan. Hey, so was my dad. She would watch every game. The Alabama football catchphrase is "Roll Tide." My sister and I immediately began crying because it just seems unreal. And then the planchette starts moving again. This time it's sliding around and going to "Goodbye." I ask, "Do you want us to stop playing?" And the planchette quickly slides to yes. My sister doesn't want to stop. She asks, "But why? We want to ask more questions." And the planchette quickly moves across the board to spell out the word "bad." This is enough for me. I felt like if this was my mama and she was telling us to stop playing, maybe we should take her advice and stop. She said bad. Does that mean something bad will happen, or this is bad? I don't want to find out, but after trying to convince my sister and friends, it does no good. The planchette keeps circling around the board and going back to "goodbye" over and over again. Finally, everyone says goodbye because it was clear nothing else was going to be discussed. But then, for some reason, I was talked into participating again. This time, when something answered us back, the planchette moved across the board even faster, but it was between 2 letters. Z-O, 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 and that's all it would say. I don't know what the others felt, because we really didn't talk about it much, but it felt like the room became colder. It was unanimous that we decided to say goodbye. We were shaking. Whatever we spoke with just didn't feel right. My sister and I decided to sleep in the same bed. I remember laying in bed and being huddled together and just looking around the room. Every sound made me jump. I swear, I could see dark humanoid figures around the room. Maybe it was paranoia. I did not sleep that night. I kept thinking about how Mama, or whatever was imitating her, said "bad," like it was a warning. My sister ended up getting rid of the board shortly after. I'm not sure what she did with it. I know her and some of her other friends tried to play with it again in a very old graveyard near our house, with graves from back in the 1800s. While they were playing, they heard what sounded like footsteps in the woods around the graveyard, and what sounded like scraping on one of the headstones. I don't plan on touching another Ouija board again. Went out to get Dutch waffles in the middle of the night, and got chased by a creepy, smiling man. This story happened around 2017. I was 18 or so and lived in a dorm around Kiev. It was built at the stupidest place possible for a student's dormitory. In a quiet neighborhood between your regular 9-4 houses with strollers and old ladies sitting on benches. This was kinda uncomfortable, and logistics were awful, especially at night with the nearest subway station being at 30 minutes walk distance. So long story short, I had my final second-year exams coming, and I was studying non-stop with all-nighters and a fridge full of Red Bull. What can I say? German was pretty hard. During one of these nights, I felt this unbearable craving for Dutch stroopwafels. I guess my brain was finally going crazy, without sugar and enough sleep. By that time, I was already tired of studying and desperate for a walk and a cigarette. My roommates were sleeping and my best friend was deep in her books, also studying. So I went out to get some waffles, alone, at 1:30 a.m. Yeah, I know. Actually, it wasn't something unusual. We went out a lot, even in the middle of the night. It's not like we lived in the most dangerous Kiev neighborhood. It was the second or third dangerous, I guess. So I grabbed my wallet and cigarette case. Mental note, this is an important detail, and went out. Another important detail, we had some kind of a curfew in our dorm. After midnight, doors were always locked, and you couldn't open them unless someone from the inside buzzed you in. Usually, it was some grumpy lady from the dorm administration, if you were unlucky enough, and it took them literally forever to open the door. They were usually just sleeping, even though it was a regular night shift they were paid for. Seriously, I knew a girl who waited for 15 minutes outside in the middle of the night, in January, and she was still yelled at for being late. Anyway, I went out. It was a pleasant May evening, warm and quiet. I put in headphones, lit the first cigarette, and headed to the ATB. It was the nearest, even though not the fanciest, 24/7 market within a 10 miles walking distance. While approaching the market, I noticed a man. He stood at the bus stop, which was strange because it was like an hour since the last bus, and the next one would not be here until 6 a.m. So I figured he was drunk or had nowhere to go and was about to get ready to call it a night and sleep at a bus stop bench, or was simply waiting for a taxi at a visible spot. The only way to cross the street without making a huge detour was to take an underground crossing near the bus stop. My craving for Dutch waffles was unbearable, and it was kind of a big street with a lot of lights and cars going here and there, even in the middle of the night, so I took it. Yeah, I know. Before going down the stairs, I looked back at the man and realized 3 things. 1. He didn't look like a homeless person. His clothes weren't fancy, but they definitely were clean, and were the right size. He was shaved and generally decent. 2. He wasn't drunk or high as far as I could see. He stood firmly on his feet. Definitely not too drunk. There were no bottles or anything near him. His face was concentrated. His eyes were completely sober. 3. He looked directly at me. I stopped for a second to put out a cigarette and throw it away in a trash bin, but I looked at him and his eyes were just so intense. He didn't blink. His gaze didn't dart away. He just looked right at me with this completely focused stare, like he tried to remember everything he saw. He then nodded. I nodded back and went for my Dutch waffles. I was afraid he would follow me into the underground crossing, but he stayed there. When I looked back, he was still staring at me. After a while, I was coming back with the waffles in both hands. I honestly forgot about the man on the bus stop. It's not like he was the only strange person I met during my prior 2 years living in Kiev. And also, I was tired and really concerned about my German exam tomorrow, So yeah, I was coming back the same way, and it didn't occur to me that the man was still there until I saw him again. He stood at the same spot, exactly the same look, exactly the same heavy stare. I kinda started to feel nervous. My instincts were screaming to get out. This time, I wasn't looking directly at him, and I proceeded a little bit quicker. As soon as I passed him, lighting another cig, I heard footsteps behind. I tried to convince myself that he just decided to finally call it a night. But come on, why now? Why just after I passed, heading to a poorly lighted, empty, small street? I began to walk quicker and quicker. His footsteps became quicker too. We were entering an empty, quiet street. It was still like 5 minutes walk to my dorm. It was almost 2 a.m. My hands were full of waffles. My own stupidity was never so obvious. At some point, I was almost ready to run. I even began to, but then the man called out. "Excuse me, lady. Don't be scared. You just dropped your cigarettes. Here they are." I didn't stop. I was kind of panicked, tired. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours a day in a week. I didn't stop, but I looked back. And yeah, he did have a pack in his hand. Pack of the exact Winstons that I smoked. I slowed down, and then I realized one thing. I had a cigarette case back then, because A, it was cool, and B, I didn't want to smoke too much. You can only put 10 cigs in there, so I was sure I won't smoke too much during one day. I didn't carry packs around. Never. And then the man smiled at me and started to walk towards me really fast. Oh boy, did I run. As soon as I started to run, he ran too. My heart sank. I was terrified. I really wanted to scream, but decided to save my breath. I'm really, really, really not a good runner. He was quick, and the distance between us was getting smaller and smaller with every second. I went full panic mode. I knew that after the next turn we had a straight road leading to my dorm, without any lights. Perfect sprint material. I also knew that even if he wouldn't get to me on that road, I still wouldn't be able to open the door right away, and I would probably be beaten, raped, or who knows what else before anyone would even bother to open the door. I had no time to call the police or someone inside. Meanwhile, the man was just running behind, silently, without any words, and menacingly, because I turned around one time to look, and I swear he was smiling. Barking dogs don't bite. And this man sure was about to bite. Something about him was completely off. Eerie smile while running like a Usain Bolt, complete silence, and these focused, unwavering eyes. For a moment there, I was sure I'm about to die. But then I took the last turn and saw another man. For a split second, I thought it was an accomplice of the one behind me. But then I realized it was another student, Alex, from the 3rd year, the one I saw a couple of times in a dorm. All I could think about was thank God. I ran faster. I screamed hysterically, something like, "Stop, Alex, stop. Please stop, Alex. Please stop." Thank God he stopped and turned around. The man behind me went slower. I didn't turn around before I reached Alex. When I did, I saw him standing by the turn, breathing hard, but still smiling. I started to tug on Alex's sleeve to get him going to the dorm. I was positive that man will now run to catch us both after a quick timeout, but he just waved at us. I don't know why I remember this, but it wasn't like a cool kind of wave. He waved clumsily, like a kid who was learning to give his mama bye-bye, clapping his palm with his fingers. And then he ran off. That's basically all. We got into the dorm without any further adventures, rushing inside while I tried to explain, not very successfully, what happened. Alex kinda read the mood, and I didn't even have to hurry him. I honestly don't know what would have happened if he wasn't there. I thanked him like a million times after that. I never saw that man again, despite living 2 more years at that same dorm. I was terrified, but I still ate my waffles. After that, I got a pepper spray. I still haven't used it, but now I feel a lot safer. Now it's just a scary story I tell my friends or Tinder dates when we run out of topics to talk about, and the silence is too awkward. but something is still bugging me. The pack the man had in his hand were Winston's, the exact same Winston's I smoked. It never occurred to me until some time later that there could possibly be two explanations. Either this was pure coincidence, or he checked the cigarette I put out before going down underground, crossing, and bought exactly the same pack while I was buying waffles. And to be honest, the last one scares me. So, the creepy man from the bus stop, let's not meet ever again. The reason I now check every room whenever I get home. A few years back, I moved in with a friend of a friend. She was a nice girl. We were well suited as we were both fairly independent. We both worked and had partners. We'd often spend alternating nights away, and we rarely spent more than 30 minutes a day together. We didn't even have a living room set up because we usually just stuck to our separate ends of the house. One Saturday night, my boyfriend was sick, so I came home instead of staying at his place like I usually did on weekends. The kitchen light was on and there were full grocery bags on the counter. I yell out to my housemate that I'm home and get no reply. Assuming that she must have gone back out, I make myself some dinner and go to my room to watch some TV. An hour later, I can hear her car coming down the street. She had a very nice, loud car, so I knew it was her. I get up to go put my dishes in the sink, and as I get to the kitchen, I hear a door close at her end of the house. I froze in place. My housemate walks in the front door. She sees the look on my face and begins to ask what's wrong when we hear another noise from her end of the house. She quietly asks, "What the heck was that?" I said I didn't know, and I loudly announced, "I'll grab my baseball bat. I just heard a door close." I grab my bat. We tentatively check room by room and find no one. One room left, the laundry. As we approach the closed door, we hear the sliding exterior door open. Someone running and jumping the back fence into a neighbor's yard. At this point, I close and lock the door. I call the police. We stood there shaking, and all these little dominoes fall into place. For months, we have been joking that we must have a ghost because we swore that certain things have been slightly moved from where we left them, by inches or rotation. Sometimes we would come home and there would be lights off or a smell of cleaning products after neither of us had been there all day. The deadbolt locks on our back doors were down and unlocked, even though we both were pretty conscious of security. There was no forced entry. There was no tampering with the windows. The only way into the house was through the front door, and the only way into the backyard was through the house. Turns out the owner of the house lived on our street. We only met him once. He was a creepy dude and seemingly high off his face at the time. The only things we ever remembered going missing were things like deodorant and the odd piece of clothing. We were never able to prove that he was the one in the house, but it was the most likely scenario, as they had obviously been watching us closely enough to enter when we weren't home. They had a key to the property, and all of our direct neighbors were elderly. It's really unsettling to think too far about it. I'm glad that neither of us were assaulted. It's so strange to me that they stayed in the house that entire time after I arrived home. I'm glad that my housemate wasn't there alone that night. I always thought I had a pretty good gut. But being home with a stranger in the house for an hour without any inkling has given me some serious trust issues with my intuition. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed, leave a like. And I know I just hit, what was it? 300 subscribers 2 days ago. I'm already at 330. Thank you guys for watching the channel. I never even thought I'd get to 200. Heck, I never thought I'd get to 100. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Bye-bye. The planchette slid to yes. We kinda giggled because we thought it was one of us responsible. That this is enough for me. I feel... I almost threw up. This is enough for me. I felt like if this was the way I'm dying, I'm sorry. It was the second and third. They were usually just sleeping, even though it was a regular night shift if they were paid for. But they definitely were clean. His face was clean. He was shaved and generally decent. Decent? Excuse me? Me? Hello? His gaze did. I honestly had forgotten about the man on the bus stop. It's not like he was the only strange person I met during my prior 2 years. Man, I'm clearing my throat so much. I'm dying. I'm sorry. I was kind of panicked, tired. I hadn't slept in more than 4 hours a day this week. I was kind of panicked, tired. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours a day in the week. I'm so stupid. I was kind of panicked. I knew that after the next turn we had a straight road leading to my dorm. They wrote Gorm. Gorm! For a moment there, I was sure I'm about to die. But then I took the last turn and saw another man. Ah! Come in.
What?
I was recording.
Sorry. You need a red light outside your door or something.
I do, you're right. Like a kid who was learning to give his mama a goodbye. After I got... I'm officially scared. Here comes the last score. Excuse me, Mr. Cord. Can you stop falling, please? Thank you.